Hi everyone, in this video we're going to take a look at the placer node. So the placer node is what you use to paint mesh points onto surfaces, and you can also manipulate mesh points with it. The best way to demo it is actually to show you it in action. So I'm just going to select a load of models here and then I'm going to paint them onto this ground plane here. So let's select our models. I'm going to create a new mesh network and I'm going to make sure that it's set to instancer just because we can create quite a lot of geometry and I want this to be nice and fast for the demo. Going to hit apply and close, and by default we get our linear distribution. I don't want linear distribution just because I'm going to paint all the points, so I'm just going to set this number of points to 0, and then I'm going to add a placer node like so. And so here's our interface. We've got our 4 brushes here: add, delete, collide, and ID, and then we've got our 3 manipulators here: move, rotate, and scale. So the add brush is probably where you'll spend most of your time. It has the most settings and the most hidden modes as well. So you can just click and drag to begin painting. I can just undo that and go again. And yeah, so a few basic settings to get used to. So we've got a brush radius here, so I can hold down the B key and just drag, or I can adjust that using the slider here. And then when I paint, you notice that nothing changes just because I'm painting with the default settings. However, if I turn on scatter here, you'll see that a new point is created randomly inside the brush radius, which is pretty cool. So you can also turn up the scatter density, which means that every time you create a point, you're actually creating several at once. And the brush spacing here is how often, like how far the brush has to move before we repaint. So that's what the spacing does. And I'll just undo all of that, and I'll just make the radius of the brush slightly smaller. So just turn scatter off. Now if we just add some points here like so, we've also got this ID brush, and the ID brush allows us to paint fixed IDs, so we can change some of our IDs here, and we can change some more, and then we can keep going in and refining these. And yeah, so that's what the ID brush does. Let's go back into the add mode here, and what we can do is we can also paint. When we paint points, we can assign them random IDs. So if I go between 0 and 3, you can see what your IDs are by looking at the instancer. So 0, 1, 2, 3. So this will give us the grass and the mushrooms. So back onto the placer, reactivate the tool. Always, whenever you go back onto the placer's interface, you have to reactivate a tool. It's worth remembering that. And now when we're painting, you see we're getting one of these 4 random IDs. So you also have a random seed for this as well. If you're not happy with the result, change the random seed. And we can undo that. And we can also use delete brush here to delete points. There you go. So let's turn the scatter back on and paint a few more points. See, there you go. Okay. Pretty nifty. Right, so while we've painted some points, notice that we've got some intersections going on here. You can see that. So this mushroom and this piece of grass, good demos of that. So let's undo that, and then let's turn on create. We can turn on collide on create, which means that when we are painting these objects, we will make an attempt to make sure that they don't touch each other. However, so you can see the result is much better, but it's not perfect. So you've got these two here. And that could be because they're trying to get away from, say, these points around them, and they're both trying to get away from them, and then they both end up in the same place. And so it's not perfect. So there is another mode, but it might be good enough for you. There's another mode that we've got, which is called strict, which means that an area can be deemed full, and you can then not paint in it anymore. So if I just keep painting here, we'll not be adding any more points because the placer node has deemed that area to be full. And how full the area is based on each object being having an original scale of 1 scene unit. I will talk about this at the end actually. So it's kind of nifty, kind of cool. It also takes in scale into account. So if we want all of our objects to start off with a scale of say 5, and I paint, notice that the strict collision is taking the scale of the objects into account. So the idea is your object scale should be determined by the placer node, and then we know where all the points are. We just do a simple spherical collision just to make sure the points don't intersect. So that's what that does. So we can change this random scale back to something like 0.75 and then say 1.25, and then we can paint a load of these mushrooms around. There you go. Pretty cool. Okay, so let's put some trees in, actually. Let's put some trees in. So we want an ID going from 4 to, I think, 19. Let's just check our instancer. How many objects do we have? 19. So now when I paint, whoops, classic mistake, got to select the tool. Now when I paint, I'm getting trees. So the trees are going to be much larger. So let's get the trees scale something like, I don't know, 5 to 8. And let's just paint again and see what we get there. So some nice big trees here. And we can just getting some random IDs, which is nice. So there you go. And now we can add some grass and mushrooms. So we can set this back down to say 0.75 and 1.25, and we'll do 0 to 3. I think, and we can paint some mushrooms in here. So the mushrooms, of course, as you see, will avoid the trees because we don't want any. We've got strict collide on create turned on, which means that they'll avoid them. So we can turn that off if we want to, so you can get closer. But we can just give our a carpet of mushrooms and grass to the scene. We could obviously separate them out and only paint, say, paint the mushrooms and then do the grass separately if we wanted to. So something else that's cool that we can do is we can, when you're in the add brush, so make sure you're in the add brush, we can hold down the shift key and we can click on some objects and that will scale them up. Oops, hold on the shift key. These little dots that are appearing are showing us which mushrooms are being scaled or which points are being scaled. And this works on all the points, so do that. And then we can hold down Control, which will scale the objects down. So you might think this is actually pretty slow going, right? So what controls this is the brush strength, which you control with the N key. So you control brush strength with the N key or with the slider over here. So if I change the brush strength to something really high, see these grow really, really quickly. And if I press Control and scale them down, they'll scale down really quickly. So when we scale these objects up, you'll notice that they all collide. Well, that's no good, is it? So maybe we don't want them to collide. So once we've scaled them up here using the brush, we can actually change the collide brush and then paint the collide brush. Now, these objects are trying to trying to get away from everything, right? So this is probably a bad example considering I painted everything with the fill mode on, with the strict collision turned on. But the idea is that these things will all move away from each other. And you can keep painting the collisions until they are all satisfied that they're far enough away from each other. So that's what the collide mode does. Back in add mode, say we specifically want to add, kind of control the scale of the objects that we're adding. Well, something else that we can do is we can hold down the M key before we paint. So hold down the M key, then click and drag. Oops, sorry, what have I done? Oh, that's it. Just wasn't holding it down. Hold down the M key, and then when you click and drag, you can control the scale and the rotation of an object as you place it, like so. We've got random ID turned on here, so that's also something you can do. And yeah, so that's kind of it for the basics. I will show you something else pretty cool. Let's just create a sphere over here. I'll scale it up. Quite large. And then I'll go back to our mesh network here and change our ID 4 to 19, something like that. And then what I can do is go back into the brush here and I can just paint on the surface of this object like so. And then hold down shift and paint some scales or whatever. Do whatever you want to do. Then we can switch to the collide brush and move these apart so that they don't collide anymore. Notice that they're sticking to the surface when we collide them. That's pretty cool. So there we go. Now if we drag this sphere into, is it this sphere? Hold on. This sphere, no, it was this sphere. What's this sphere? Don't know what that is. If we drag this sphere into the paint meshes here, and then we go to the add brush, and then we paint some objects, we get some more. But if I now paint on this object here, nothing happens, and that's because we've set the placer to only paint on that particular sphere, so all of the collisions will be ignored. So that's how that works. And then what we can do is we can, let's just zoom in here, we can switch to a manipulator. So we have to drag over a model, so we have to do drag selection. So if I do a drag selection here, I can move our mash points up, and this works for points coming into the placer as well. So you can manipulate, so you can do a normal distribution using any of the other nodes, and then you can just drag select them. So we can do a drag selection there, and we can also scale. So if I do a drag selection here, I can also scale these objects up like so, and then we've got rotation as well. So pretty sure there was something else we could do. Oh, we can brush a line. So I might just nip into a new project to show you that. So if I create some boxes and I create a plane to paint onto like so. Let's give this cube a color so we can see it. I'll create a mesh network, zero that out, create a placer, and just go into the add brush, paint these objects around, whatever. So if we hold down J and paint, we can align everything to the stroke. So we can also align as we paint, right? So aligning to the stroke, that can be tricky. So you can see these points, well, they're actually kind of aligned anyway. So it can be tricky. However, if we just undo all of our efforts there, we've got this rotation mode, align to brush. So if I paint these now, you can see that they are aligned to the brush, which is easier than aligning to the stroke afterwards, holding down the J key. So you can do this if you want to. And we've also got alignment rotation off. We can also assign random rotations. So if I turn rotation mode to off and give random rotations here, and then I just paint these things, you'll see that they all get completely randomized rotations. So that's how that works. Yeah, okay, so we're done as far as the kind of rough intro to the placer goes. And yeah, that's that. I hope you've enjoyed it, ask any questions, and I will see you in the next video.